All right, so I want to show everyone how easy it is to look up data on the schools across Richmond County. This is the Georgia Department of Education College and Career Ready Performance Index. These are the years they have on file. There are ways you can get the 2020 and 2021 numbers. They're just kind of incomplete, so they're not as relevant, but you can still get those numbers to get some additional data. So if we look up high schools, now this is the entire state. We see 58% of our schools are Title One. You see we have some progress issues across the state. Content mastery is going up. Closing gaps is going up. So this is how the state is performing right now. So I want you to kind of pay attention to that, and then we're going to dig into Josey specifically. So I think you can do it here. Let's look at Josey specifically. All right, so when this was done, this is back in December when this was done, 741 students. You know what, this may not be December. Let me see. I'll have to confirm when the dates are on this. And we'll come back to that. So if you look at our demographics, of course, we're 83.4% Black, 11.6% Hispanic, 100% economically disadvantaged. English learners are 7.6%, and then we have student disabilities at 19.6%. As you can see, our numbers are definitely below the state average, but there's progress that has been made there. This is a big one here with closing gaps, and what that essentially means is every student was able to improve. Graduation rates, our average went down because the 4-year graduation rate went down, but as you can see, our 5-year graduation rate is up a little bit. So let's take a look at that graduation rate. So here this is where our district is, and this is where the state is. This is where we are. So 4-year graduation rates dropped, 5 years increased. Under our 4 years, we have some flags here. Of course, the target is here for the students, and this is where we ended up. We have too few students in some of these other ones to develop markers, but as you can see, the target is 76% here, but our rate is 66 among our disadvantaged students. And then we're also having challenges with students with disabilities. The too few students piece makes the numbers kind of misaligned because the disparity between how many Black students it is versus some of the other races, it almost makes the pieces negligible, like they kind of don't matter, but they kind of do in the grand scheme of things. So this is what we have for our 4-year. If you look at our 5-year, we have some increases here. We're above target for that. We have a slight decrease here among our Black students. Again, it's counting our Hispanic students as too few students. And then here we have our others. Now, when you see data like this, and I'm just going to explain how data works in general, because this number here says too few students, you can't just go off of this to say, boom, this is the entire scope of the data. You have to look at other markers to figure out what is the actual impact of these too few students. So this is where we are graduation rate wise. As I've said many, many times, our 4-year rate has dropped. Our 5-year has increased. That means it's simply taking students longer to graduate. If we look at content mastery, this is across different subject matters. Of course, our district score is 35 and our state is 69. We have vastly increased here. We have a reasonable participation rate between the students. And then we have our different achievement scores here. So again, this is where things get hairy when it says too few students. You have to look at the actual population numbers and the Oh my God, it's escaping me right now. Absenteeism, to figure out what is happening here. Because if you look at this, you would just write off our non-black students as, oh, it's just a few of them, so it doesn't matter. It matters. It could be the difference between 1 to 2 percentage points, and that's where things kind of matter. So here you can see students are meeting improvement targets. So we're meeting some of the targets. Um, Here, students with disabilities didn't necessarily meet targets for algebra. We have some disparities here, where most of our students are in beginner level or developing level. If we look at literature, we have the same issue there. Biology, similar with our Hispanic students not meeting the mark in biology. And then when you look at the U.S. history, doing a little better there. And then we have here our students beginning learner levels. So we increase numbers in content mastery, definitely not where we need to be, but still not as far as we were in the past. Because if you look at here, where the increases are, a 10-point increase here is actually pretty significant. Let's look at progress. Now, progress is growth in language arts, math, and how well English learners are progressing toward the language. Now, we did 58% here, so a significant increase. We have some really good increases here, progress toward English language proficiencies here. So there are improvements that have happened over time. But see here, you have the too few students again, so it's not even conceptualizing some of the English language proficiency that is necessary, but let's look at that. So this is kind of what's telling, right? Our English learners, these are meaning the students who may not be native English speakers. The bulk of the students don't have any positive movement, and then we have some movement across the performance bands there. If we look at the English learners here, there's some improvement that has been made, but is it enough to get to where we need to? We have 66 in math here. Hispanic students are actually performing really well in math, but English as a language arts, now it says too few students. So again, when you're looking at the data, if you can say too few students here for English language arts, but then math, you can have a number, then that means there are disparities across how the students, or not students, the participation between these particular things. Closing gaps, we were at 100%. The district score is 55.6. The state is 71.3, and Josey scored 100%. So that's significant. Like, that's huge. We're tracking above state. So looking at these numbers, again, you see the too few students, but then for algebra, you see it here. So it's looking like if it's related to literature and English ELA, your non-black and white students aren't participating. That's what it looks like in the data, because it's not there, but it's here, right? Biology, we saw another one where biology was where our Hispanic students were not meeting. We hit targets here. And I'm not meaning to pick on the Hispanic students. I'm kind of trying to prove a point that I've said something, and somebody keeps saying that I'm not being truthful. But here's where the rubber meets the road: readiness. We are at 41 on readiness score, 60 for the district, 75 for the state. At or above reading level, grade, excuse me, I can stop. I can't talk. Jesus. At or above grade level reading, we have 25%, which is a good deal of increase here. But we do have the bulk of our students reading below grade level at Josey, unfortunately. Student attendance went down quite a bit, of 3.5 points is kind of is significant. We do have a bit of students in advanced placement this go around, and we do have a good bit of students in dual enrollment. If you remember, dual enrollment at Josey is facilitated has been facilitated rather through East Georgia State College, and East Georgia actually came to the campus for that. Pathway completion, advanced academic, CTAE, fine arts and world language. We have some decent numbers here with some increases. College and career readiness. The readiness scores for ACT and SAT, not where we need to be, but we have a good bit of students that won't need remediation, and then we have students who are doing well in the ASVAB. Which is military. So if we look at school attendance, this is where our attendance scores are now. Yep. So this means this is the percentage of students that are attending. I'm going to clarify that. I pause because I need you to understand this is the number of students that are attending. So less than half of our students are consistent with their attendance. Population is not what controls graduation rates. It is absenteeism. Because if they're not in school to do the work, they're not going to complete the classes, which means it takes them longer to graduate. So when I talk about we have a high absenteeism rate, what's the other half of this? 39.3% means 60.7% of Black students are not consistently attending school. 65.88% of Hispanic students are not attending so consistently. So this number, 39.08, so what is that? 60.02%? No. Yeah, 60.92%. So our graduation rates are up there. Attendance, absenteeism rates are up there. So this is the data on the most recent CCRPI. You can look back at previous years and see where we were. We were decreasing quite a bit. Let's look at that attendance again. Attendance, we were at a little bit higher previous, but here we had a much higher here. So we've lost some students along the way. Let's look at 2023. It didn't have any up or down markers there, but let's look at student attendance again. Student attendance was lower then than it is now. In a lot of cases, so we still had similar issues. I want to look at this one. So let's look at English learners. Now, English learners are our students that are not necessarily English speakers. So back in 2023, we had 52.78%. Let's look at 2025, too few students. So that kind of tells you there was a drop off there. Same thing with the year before that, too few students. Let's look at 2022. No student attendance reported. Okay, so certain things weren't necessarily reported. But if you see, here's where we were in readiness. Closing gaps, nothing was reported there. So yeah, 2022 was coming off of COVID. Prior to COVID, here's where we were as far as closing gaps. They don't do school climate or financial efficiency anymore, I don't think. Not sure why, but yeah, well, look at the numbers. This is actually new. They didn't have 2019 and 2018 in here. They had it in the old system at first. But here's where we were pre-COVID. Graduation rate was 75.2% pre-COVID. So we know the drastic difference between 2019 and 2022 as far as graduation rates. There, something happened there. We know that. We know COVID happened. But here we were at 67%. We creeped up to 68, 60, 74, and then we recently dropped down. I want to go into the data analysis, but I'm already at like 15 minutes on this, so I'm not going to go into this drop off. And I've talked about this drop off a few times. And as you can look where our English learners are, that's where some of the drop off is. Even though a population may only be a small section of a larger group, significant drop off from that small section can drop points where you're like, oh, well, it's not enough people to actually impact anybody. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So when there's one thing to just look at data and say, boom, this is the graduation rate. It's another thing to actually analyze the data and then come back with a story of what the data says. It can't just be one thing to look at, because like I said before, with the too few students here, but you can view English learners and Hispanic students in other places, that means there is a that means there is a consistency problem across the data. And if you don't look at all of it, you can't determine that. So I know I've spent almost 20 minutes kind of explaining the CCRPI stuff, but I want people to just get in the mindset of looking up the information, not just celebrating the small wins. You want to celebrate the wins, yes, but you need to understand the information. Just looking up a statistic isn't enough. You have to interpret what the statistic means. So I'm going to stop there because I've been talking for 17 minutes. But anyway, I hope you are able to go out and find just this information. Of course, all schools are here. We can pull up Butler and look at their numbers. You can pull up any school in the district and kind of look at where they are and get different information from how those schools are performing. And then I believe they do also the overall district as well, but that information is so yeah, let's look at the district report. We have 31,937 students across 49 schools. 100% of our schools are Title IV. Of course, we are a predominantly Black community with a good bit of students with disability, lots of economically disadvantaged folks within the school system, 7.6% Hispanic. And then here's where schools are kind of trending. Of course, our magnets are performing where they should be. I mean, they're magnet schools. They get to cherry pick their students. So, of course, they should have high numbers. Glen Hill, 74.2% graduation rate. Josey's right behind at 69. A.R. Johnson, another magnet. Hephzibah's at 85. Good job, Hephzibah. Laney, 75%. So, this is really good information where you can kind of get it from the horse's mouth as far as where this information is located. There's no need to necessarily wait on the Board of Education to provide this information. It is out here. It is out here. It is out here. It is out here. As a district, we are performing better overall across all schools. Do we have some opportunities? Absolutely, we do, especially in our high schools. But in most districts, high schools are where the districts are struggling. And a lot of that is honestly related to social aspects of these kids' lives that have nothing to do with education but affect how education is delivered. So, give grace to our high school students. They're navigating a lot in their social lives that we as adults have either forgotten about, or maybe we just didn't have to deal with it because we didn't have such access to each other. Either way, this has been a lesson in kind of just reviewing information and making sure you do your own research. So that's CCRPI. I'll do another video on how to do the how to find information on the Richmond County Board of Education website, and I'll stop right there. Have a good one.